Russell Van Brocklen. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on. I'm very much interested in this conversation because I feel for the creative community, it may answer some unknown questions that they might have about
Well,
life.
before you go into that, just so everybody knows, if you want to, you're talking about the creative community. To me, the top one in that is it's a film maker called Steven Spielberg,
Yeah,
and we're both dyslexic.
right on. Okay,
So I think you find that why is he so successful? We'll kind of go and discuss part of that today.
perfect, perfect. Let me give the audience a brief introduction here for you before we dive into the conversation. You are the founder of Dyslexia Classes, which is an ed tech startup focused on helping students, especially those with dyslexia, overcome challenges in reading, writing, comprehension. A key component is your own lived experience with severe dyslexia. You're a pioneering researcher with stake backed results. Your research program was funded by NY State Senate, that's New York State Senate, and is owned by SUNY Research Foundation, with findings showing that motivated high school students with dyslexia improve their writing skills 7 to 8 grade levels in a single academic year, which is tremendous. You're an author, a speaker, and also an advocate. You have presented at the Everyone Reading Conference in Manhattan multiple times, as well as the Learning Disability Association in New Jersey. And you've authored work helping parents, teachers, and tutors who support struggling dyslexic students move toward lasting confidence. This is something that I'm very interested in hearing your perspective on because I feel in some scenarios I might possibly have this characteristic as well. So this is going to be enjoyable for me.
Okay. Why don't we find out and see if you do have it? Are you ready to answer a few up to three questions?
Sure, let's go there first. That'll be great.
Okay. So, first thing that we need to do is to pick out one of your specialities. Doesn't matter which one. It's your area of extreme interest and ability. So, what is one of your specialities?
Drawing.
Drawing. So, when you're thinking about drawing, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but key question, but with little to no organization?
No.
Okay. When you're thinking about writing about drawing, fingers, keyboard. You have the idea in your head. You take your fingers, put it on the keyboard. Does the idea fly out of your head, leaving you with an empty brain?
No.
When you were in elementary school, did they ever threaten to hold you back because you couldn't pass some academic task? Like literally, an adult came to you and said, if you don't pass this test, you're being held back.
No, I didn't do that.
Okay. You're probably not ADD, ADHD, or dyslexic then.
Okay.
The characteristic, the first question, everybody answers yes to that one.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So let me just, because you're talking about a creative person.
Yes.
So the reason why I just mentioned Spielberg's name, because at his height, what he would do is I want you to imagine one of these massive $100+ million blockbusters that would take any other senior director a year or more to do typically.
Yeah.
And Spielberg would go and put on his director's hat and knock out three in less than a year.
Got you.
Okay.
Okay.
And the reason why he did that is because, and then he would take huge hiatuses because what happened with him is he had a very disappointing first marriage. And then his second wife came to him and said, listen, I actually want to be a housewife. I actually want to and I want you on the tape. I want you home.
Yeah.
And so that worked out. And when Katzenberg called him, they're discussing DreamWorks, his wife literally said, well, as long as you're home, at a decent hour, I don't care what you do with them during the daytime. Okay.
Right.
So then he would then just take the years between projects, then you would just knock out like three at once.
Okay.
Because as he said, he could not, if he had to focus on just one movie at a time, he would obsess up to a point that would make it's bad for the project. So he had to do multiple ones.
Yes.
So essentially for him, what's going on is let's just understand what dyslexia is by the science. This is the top book in my field. It's called
Okay.
Overcoming Dyslexia by Dr. Shaywitz. This is the second edition. She's from
Got it.
Yale. This is dyslexia. See
Okay.
how the back part of the gen ed brain has this massive neuroactivity?
Yeah.
No, the back part of the dyslexic brain has next to nothing,
Sure.
but the front part of the dyslexic brain is about 2.5 times overactive.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at that, the problem for people with dyslexia is our brains compared to a normal brain are just completely opposite. And you don't get us at all.
Yeah.
Okay. So, how do we fix that? And how do we give you an example of like why Spielberg is so effective? All right. One thing about Steven Spielberg is I just noticed when I was going through his career is when he would shoot something, he had very little film on the cutting floor. He doesn't shoot digital, he shoots film. Doesn't matter. And I'll give you a little hint, the studios aren't bugging him over it.
Right.
Right. So when he gets done shooting, there's very little wasted scenes. And it drives him insane when other filmmakers spend zillions of dollars shooting all this stuff and then it's left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
He does so much stuff just in his head at such an evolved level. How is that possible? Because it's the front part of the dyslexic brain. How is the dyslexic brain so creative? Because it's this overactive front part. So let me
Yeah.
give you an example, because we're talking about adults here, about how you can have a much better understanding of what all of this is, but also something that your audience can take away and use. All
Okay.
right. So I'm going to use an advanced form of articulation. I'm sorry, word analysis followed by articulation. Why those two? Because if you look at the research again, that overactive front part of the brain,
Yep.
according to Yale, that's word analysis followed by articulation. So let's kind of go through that and explain this. And I'm going to give you an idea. We're going to start off with movie reviews. And
Okay.
people are going to ask in your audience, what is he talking about? This seems like so out of left field. A lot of stuff that dyslexics come up with are completely out of left field, but once they explain it, it makes total sense. All
Right.
right. So let's start off with a movie that here's the 3 criteria. Number 1, it's one of your favorite movies of all time. Number
Okay.
2, you know it intimately. And number 3, everybody's seen it.
Probably Man on Fire.
Man on Fire. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you a very difficult thing. I need you to reduce the Man on Fire to a one-word universal theme that best represents the movie in your view.
Love.
Okay. Now, if you wanted to write a proper review of Man on Fire, what you would do is you take your favorite, the actors and actresses you think were the most important, write how they did with the universal theme of love. Then you go and how did the director do the universal theme of love? Then how did the screenwriter do with the universal theme of love? And then you would write your review.
Yeah.
People would want to see it or they would not want to see it. If they wanted to see it, you have enhanced their experience because now they know what to look for.
Yeah.
Okay. Through whom? Okay. But you haven't ruined it by telling them that this happened and this happened, which is how a review is written by a child.
Gotcha.
But unhappily sneaks into major publications because that's what they do. And then it ruins it. All right. So, but here's the problem with the universal theme of love. It's a very broad stroke. We
Yeah.
can't laser focus like we need to nowadays.
Yeah.
Back when we were kids, when the internet was small or next to nothing, we did mass media. You did broad strokes. But now everything is laser focused, and this doesn't work like that. So,
Right.
what we have to do is I'm going to traumatize some of your audience for a few minutes because
Okay.
we're going to go back to high school English and a Shakespeare play. Okay, it's not going to be that long,
Okay.
but some people find that traumatizing. So, I want you to think back to high school, to any Shakespeare play. Do you remember how, and just know why I'm using this, because when it comes to the English language and conveying ideas, Shakespeare is at the absolute apex, the top.
Okay.
So remember back in any Shakespeare play that number 1, there was a hero. The hero then wanted to do something. Okay. And in doing that, they're going to use one or more universal themes based on what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Then there'd be an ultimate villain, an antagonist, which is a person, a concept, or some combination there too, trying to prevent the hero from accomplishing their goal. They would have conflict in Act One, escalate like crazy in Act Two, and resolve in Act Three. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Okay. If we're going to use that general framework, we got to simplify it. All right. So let's say we're looking at the name of your movie again, which is, what was it again?
Man on Fire.
Man on Fire. Okay. There's a hero. The hero is going to want to do something in Man on Fire. So what I would then do is I'm just going to tell you there are two ways to explain this. One are to teenagers who are in school, and one are grown adults. I'm going to explain this to you like adults.
Yeah.
All right. Because we can do things with artificial intelligence that the kids can't. So what is your favorite artificial intelligence to use?
Currently, probably Gemini with Nano Banana.
Okay. So let's say we're just using straight Gemini. What you're going to want to do is go to the highest setting. You want to use the pro mode.
Yep.
Okay. I think that's currently 3.1 because the thinking matters. If you're using ChatGPT, you want to use the new 5.5 thinking extended.
Yeah.
If you're using Claude Opus, give you a little hint, skip 4.7, go back to 4.6 and do extended thinking. Because it's adaptive thinking, isn't going to think much. 4.6, you can still force to think harder, and then therefore it's better.
Okay.
All right. So what you're going to do is pick your AI and ask it for Man on Fire, what is it that the hero wants to do? Give me 20 paragraphs. And it'll give you 20 paragraphs. Then you tell it for each sentence, I want you to tell me the most important word in each sentence based on what the hero wants to do. And then give me a list of all those most important words, and then give me customized definitions.
Okay.
Okay. Then what I would do is then say, based on what the hero wants to do, what are the 10 best, most important words with the customized definitions? Then you, as the human, have to make the decision, the one that best fits what you're looking for.
Got it.
Okay. Now, let's go compared to the universal theme of love. We have now reached the same problem. It's really broad. This is what I call our base universal theme. Now, remember, we're doing word analysis, and this is an advanced form of that.
Got it.
So the next thing that we have to do is we have to say, based on your base universal theme, give me 100 synonyms with custom definitions. And just so you know, I have a different version of this for the kids, and they do all this manually.
Wow.
Yes. So then you list 100 synonyms with their words and their definitions. Then you say, give me, based on what the hero wants to do, what are the 10 best?
Okay.
And then it gives you those words and definitions. You have to pick the one that best matches the definition in your head.
Yeah.
If you're not happy with it, ask for 100 synonyms of that one with custom definitions and keep going. I have had people do this 8, 10, 12 times. Who cares? This AI is doing the grunt work. They're done within a couple of hours.
Right.
Once you find the one that, it's never going to be perfect, the one that best matches in your head, that's your specific universal theme that we can then use as a lens to run things through. In this case, to pick our ultimate villain,
Yeah.
our antagonist. Is it a person, a combination, or some combination there too? Then once we have that, we have our hero, our universal theme, our villain. We add a couple of words to make it a basic sentence. And then you see how that's an advanced form of word analysis.
Yes.
Then we'll go because, and you give me 3 really good reasons. For each reason, what you're going to do is to reduce it to a one-word universal theme. From that one-word universal theme, we're going to go back into your script of the movie you like so much. And we're going to find a quote that deals exactly with that universal theme at the beginning of the movie, and then one at the end of the movie. All right. We're going to put those 2 quotes together. And then from there, we're going to form our topic sentence. Now, when you've gone through school, have you ever noticed that when you had your topic sentence and then your data, it didn't flow really well?
Yes.
So have you ever thought of applying a warrant to a body paragraph?
No.
Okay. Just so everybody knows, unless if you're a PhD candidate, the chance of you knowing what a warrant is almost zero. Okay. It's a central part of a book called The Craft of Research that came out in 1995 to teach PhD students how to write their doctoral dissertations and has since sold over 1 million copies. A warrant is how you connect a topic sentence with your data by answering a how and why question.
Okay.
Once you do that, now you have your topic sentence, a warrant, and your data. Now, if you don't use a warrant after learning this, you do get arrested. That's a joke. Okay. All right. But you see how that's an evolved form of word of sorry, of articulation.
Yes.
Okay. So that is how we do things with the front part of the brain. Now, that for dealing with dyslectics, that's part 3 of the model.
Okay.
The first part is when you're dealing with any neurodiverse, ADD, ADHD, or dyslectic, is during the intervention period, be it at work or at school until we get our reading and writing up to grade level. You have to focus on our speciality, our area of extreme interest and ability.
Okay.
Now, I want you to think back to high school. Do you remember how you took all of these different classes outside of the area that you're really interested in because they wanted you to become well-rounded?
Yes. And to clarify as well, I went to a private school and they
Okay.
didn't have any any art classes that I was able to hone my craft in.
Okay. But you
Believe that.
had math, science, English,
Yep.
history, all this.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes. Because, and now I want you to go and think back to when you were in school. Think about the times when you did 2 things. You set up a proper study schedule where you gave yourself plenty of time to study, do your homework, everything. And then number 2, when you worked really freaking hard with that setup, have you noticed that you did either well to freaking amazing in school?
Actually, no, because the way that we were taught, it was in little booklets. It was called
Okay.
Accelerated Christian Education. And each grade level was a series of 12 booklets that you had to read and answer questions through. And in order to do that, that's what got you to the next grade level. You had to complete those 12 per subject for each grade level. So
Okay.
for me, honestly, I ended up getting to the point where I would just cheat because once we finished a certain amount of work within that workbook, we'd have to go to this lectern, which had the answer books, and we had to check our answers from that. And
Okay.
I got to the point where it was so frustrating for me to have to focus on reading a paragraph and then answering questions after it that I've decided I'm just going to go up there, memorize the answers, go back to my seat, and then put them in.
Okay. I mean, I want you to think for most of your classmates,
Okay.
if they set up a proper study schedule and then worked really hard, then they're really successful.
Yeah, most did. Yeah.
As a general rule. Okay. With dyslectics, let me give you an example. I want you to take a kid who just, let's call them top 5 or 10% of their class, and they go on to the big state university,
Yes.
Ohio State, Penn State, whatever.
Yep.
Okay. Because they don't want to go broke as an undergrad. Then we take a dyslectic who's equally intelligent. And the gen ed kid's going to take 5 classes, a standard low. And the dyslectic said, I'm going to take 1 class and I'm going to outstudy you 7-1. They're
Yeah.
still going to do worse.
Okay.
Okay. Why? Because through
Yep.
college, you're generally dealing with this back part of the brain where the dyslectic has nothing going on and the gen ed goes crazy. Okay.
Right.
So by that, I mean for in the intervention period, we have to focus on the kid's speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability. Number 1, let me give you an example of my most successful student. Just so everybody knows, I have never saw this before Casey. I will never see this again. Casey was a one-off edge case. It was near the end of fifth grade. She was 10 years old, going on 11. She was and she was uh, reading and writing at the second grade level. And she was fanatically interested in Theodore Roosevelt. So I assigned her this little book, The
Okay.
Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, all 1,000 pages, 900 pages.
Yeah.
This is at the 10th grade to first year college level, depending on who you ask, and it won the Pulitzer. And Casey insisted on doing reading first. I said,
Okay.
okay, Casey, here's the process. Nobody told her to do this. She went up to her room, shut the door for 3 hours a night for the next 6 months,
Mm.
most of the days during summertime.
Okay.
She was up there 8+ hours a day doing this. At the end of that time frame, I could flip to this random page, point to that random word, and she would tell me the dictionary definition of it. She jumped 8 grade levels in 6 months, and I worked with her for 15 minutes a week.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not the important point. The important point is this: when I eventually moved to a book she freaking hated, her mother wanted to know what would happen if this was just book she likes, so she have her do one she hated. Casey said her motivation dropped about 50%. The most motivated kid I've ever seen. Most dyslexics and ADD and ADHD kids outside their specialty are down 75 to 90%. Your intervention will not work most of the time. So during the intervention period, we focus on their area of speciality. Then, if you ask a dyslexic, ADD or ADHD kid, in your speciality, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization? They're going to say yes. So what we have to do is to force the dyslexic brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. So let me kind of explain what that means. So I want you to imagine if Bill Gates came to you and said, I'm going to give you 2 months. I want you to go and write this report at the high school at the ninth grade level. What effect did Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech have on the American Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s? Do you know right now how to just go to the library, start pulling books off the shelf, and start doing the research in that report?
Probably not, because I never really liked the library.
No, I'm not saying if you like it. I'm saying let's just go what it is again. What effect did Martin Luther King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech have on the American Civil Rights Movement in the 1950s? The 1960s. I'm not saying if you like it. Bill Gates is going to pay you $1 million to do this report.
Okay.
I'm asking, can you do it?
Probably yes.
Okay. You ask that to a dyslexic, and we don't know what to do. It's like grabbing fog,
Okay.
because that front part of our brain, we have the ideas of flying around our head at light speed, but there's just no organization. So what we have to do, and this is critical for everybody here that's dealing with the neurodiverse, is we have to focus on a very specific starting point and then slowly going out. So we would ask, what personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech? All right. So you start off at that. We know exactly what to do at that point.
Yeah.
What compelled him? Well, where do we find that? His biography. We look up his biography right around that time. Why the heck did he do this? All right. I mean, this is even something so specific that a dyslexic can do it. It's a very specific point. And then we read it, and that answer gives us another question, which gives us another answer, which gives us a question, which gives us an answer, which gives us a question. This forces the dyslexic brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output.
Okay.
Okay. So when you're talking to a dyslexic, instead of doing this big picture stuff and then getting to the details eventually, we start off with the detail and then we slowly go out.
Got it.
Then we do word analysis followed by articulation. Parents ask, well, how successful is this? Case I like to give an example to. His name is Reed. His mom's name is Kimberly. Kimberly is a very religious homeschooling mom with some college. We met on December 27th of 2024. Okay, Kimberly has 5 kids who she homeschools, and she just a few weeks before spent $700 and had the state of Ohio uh, look over look over her kids' results and test them. She taught her 4 non-dyslexic kids to read extraordinarily well with standard tools, standard everything. But with her dyslexic son, she failed miserably, and she felt horrible about it. Reed was in 5th grade, reading at the 11th percentile, writing at the 4th percentile. So I worked with her for an hour, for a half an hour a week. She worked with Reed for an hour and a half a week, 3 half-hour sessions. Most parents do 10 to 15-minute sessions for the next 8 months. Then Reed, over the summertime, his friends wanted him in public school to be with them socially. If even Kimberly doubled what he did, 22nd percentile in reading and 8th percentile in writing, he would still be in special ed, away from his friends, unhappy kid. So beginning of August, call it 8.5 months later, he was tested in a public school, better data. He had an increase. His reading went from the 11th percentile to the 64th. His writing went from the 4th percentile to the 65th. His grammar went to the 97th percentile. I asked Kimberly a few months ago, how's he doing? And she said he's in gen ed school, gen ed everything. He's getting mainly A's and B's. Kimberly did what every parent dreams of, and she did it at home in less than 9 months, and not 4 to 5 years at a top dyslexic school at $75,000 a year. That's how powerful this is.
Amazing. Amazing. That's fantastic. So, what I would like to do to give the audience a broader perspective on who Russell is, like to go back in time a little bit, all the
Mhm.
way back to when were you born or where were you born and what was life like as a kid for Russell before elementary school?
I went to the towering metropolis of Amsterdam, New York.
Okay.
And just so everybody wants to know, where the heck is Amsterdam, New York? I want you to go north of New York City, and then west of Boston, where that meets, is Albany, New York, our state capital.
Yeah.
And it's called Smallbany unofficially because there's about one half a couple of blocks that look like a city. That's it. And if you look down for literally a couple of seconds as you're driving by it on the highway, you will actually miss it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was born there. My family came over there about a couple of centuries before, and they actually owned a lot of manufacturing spaces in there. I think the last family business went out in like 1956. There was a glove factory. It was there for 70, 80 years.
Oh, wow.
So my parents moved when I was around, the first house I remember was in a town called West Sand Lake, which is right outside of Albany. I can literally get in the car now and be in the state capitol in 20 minutes.
Okay.
I still stayed here because I'm literally a 20-minute drive to the state capitol, but I'm in a small town,
Yeah.
and it just fit all the conveniences. Um, so not a lot happened. We live on a lake, and I remember going swimming in the town beach ever since I could remember anything.
Okay.
My parents spent a ton of money to take me to Disney World, and I remember precisely nothing from that.
Okay.
So I can't see taking your 2 or 3 year old to see Mickey Mouse because they're not going to remember. Wait
Yeah.
until they're at least 5, before you
Yeah.
spend all that. So nothing very much. It was just a pretty, same ghost swimming. I eventually got into scouts and got my Eagle Scout just before I was 18, and I thought I was like one of the wackier ones. And I found out no, average it's about 17 and some sort of average a month. So like, oh, okay. So I'm not the only crazy person that waits to the last minute.
Right. No, for sure. So, was your dad in manufacturing? Is that what he
Oh
did?
no, my dad had 3 jobs in his lifetime.
Okay.
He was a paper boy. Then he went into the Marines. He was way past Korea and missed got out before Vietnam got started.
Okay.
And they put him into fixing radio equipment, communications equipment. So then he got out. They offered him all this money to stay in, but he did his 4 years and he wanted to, raise a family. And that's not something the military is particularly conducive of. So he went to get a job with AT&T to keep their equipment maintained. And back then, things had to be so clean if you had a speck of dust, it was literally a problem. So they looked
Yeah.
at his shoes and they said, "Where did you learn to shine?" Because the guy could literally see his image. And he's a Marines. What did you do in the Marines? He told him, "You're hired." And that's all he had. They kept him there until he was ready to retire. And then they had a bunch of MBAs come in, and they
Okay.
came up with this whole productive thing.
Yeah.
And the first night they put it in, he did 48 hours of work.
Oh, wow.
Well, actually, he said he was being really lazy. Back then, he would take a tape off the machine, off from storage, put it on a machine, hook it up, run it, and then put it back. Total work 5 minutes, and that was an hour of their time. So they kept yelling. He worked at nights on purpose to avoid the management,
Right.
and they kept yelling at him. You got it. You can't. You got to stop working so hard. And it got so bad, they told him right before he retired, they said, "We want you gone on his 60th birthday." So they paid him 2 years of salary just to leave. Okay. Then at
Oh,
62, he
wow.
started getting Social Security.
Yeah.
And they took his function, had it down in Atlanta where they would call up and tell these kids what to do. And the kids made a third of what he did.
Wow. Wow. How about mom? Was she a stay-at-home mom or did she work as well?
Oh, she had my parents were very careful with money.
Okay.
We had a lot more activities and things, but they just drove used cars instead of the new ones. And
Sure.
my mom was the director of a local library,
Okay.
which was very part time.
All right.
So she was infinitely more educated formally than my father, but he's the one who made the real money. So what I found out is some of my kids in the scout troop, dads were accountants for the state. I always found out they always made about the same amount of money. And what got me was really a defining moment when I was a kid. Remember, I said my parents drove cheap cars. I mean, they spent
Yeah.
2, 3 grand on a used car and they drove it for years.
Yeah.
When we were kids, they would take us on a 2 week vacation and we didn't stay in hotels, we stayed at campsites. Now, I remember I was in scouts, so I was used to sharing it with another kid all the time. Now I got my own. I thought this was heaven. I tried camping again a couple of years ago and found out, yeah, not anymore. I'm too old for this stuff. Well, anyway, and they would always cook all our meals. We wouldn't eat at restaurants, besides maybe occasional something special. So then when I was in Scouts, they came out with this thing where it was a high adventure thing for Philmont. It was 3 days out by train to New Mexico. 10 days of the high adventure things that, it's once in a lifetime you're going to remember forever. And then coming back slow over about 4 weeks, stopping all across the country. And I told my dad, yeah, well, this is coming up. I'd like to go. I know we can. And this was in 86.
Okay.
And my father pulled out almost $4,000 for the trip. It's a hell of a lot of money back then.
Yes.
Nobody else could go. And I was like, how do we afford this? And he said, "Do you see the new car I'm driving?" I said, "No, we don't drive new cars." He said, "Exactly. Remember the trips we take? Remember the hotel rooms we sleep in? Well, we don't stay in hotels." "Exactly. Remember all the restaurants we eat at?" I said, "We don't need a restaurant." "Exactly."
Yeah.
Okay. So the rest of my troop wanted to go, but their parents didn't have the money because they went the car payments. And that
Right.
did not go over well. So on the way back, I had the time of my life on that one. All right. And my father found a way to keep me in line because, like when you're 13 years old, 12, 13, you can be a real not smart person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So
A little more adventure.
his boss's boss was actually going on the trip.
Okay.
Okay. And he held my money. All right. So what they told me at the end of the trip, they said, by far, I was the best behaved kid. All right. And they asked, why was I so well behaved? And I said, well, that's my dad's boss's boss. Okay. And if I took one step out of line, they would have called him and he would have come across country to get me.
Yeah.
And I didn't even want to conceive of what that was. Then I found out when I was adult in my 30s what that line was. And it was a pretty, I mean, they were willing to tolerate a lot for me, but I did not even do the smallest thing wrong because I didn't want to take the chance. My father never hit me, but he made it very clear. He had this look of death if I was going near that line.
Mm,
When you're a kid, you're constantly trying to push. And I
yeah.
realized I don't want to cross that line. I don't want to go near it.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah. I get it.
And yeah, well, that's the thing that when I work with, for example, I'm working with one kid now, uh, and I'm helping, he's ADHD, and I'm helping him because he wants to go into sports management.
Okay.
And he did really good in college, but you know how with AI, how much they expect you to be able to do. So
Mm,
I'm getting him accustomed to what the position actually is and how to actually use AI effectively. I'm one of those few people that does, like when they say 10x your performance, I'm
mhm.
one of those people
Okay.
who's actually doing that. When ChatGPT came out with its $200 a month pro plan, December of 05 of 2024, I bought it that day.
Really?
Okay. Yes. So it was absolutely worth it. So as we're going through that and we're going over how do you bring kids into college sports? Okay. And I would say, do you remember when, if there's something major going on in your life and you want to go and talk to your dad comes to you and says, you know, he's not a kid anymore. He's 23. His dad comes to him and says, you really need to do this. He's just doing it because he knows his father has his best interest. And even when I was, you know, my father passed away a couple of years ago, even the last year of his life, I would just not even think about doing anything. I just wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah.
All right. So I said, when you're dealing with a kid, I want you to think back to that Michael Jordan movie. Who's the adult that really told him what to do?
The
And
mom.
for Jordan, it was his mom.
Yeah.
Okay. I said, you got to find that person. And if you can't find that person, you probably don't want to take in that kid. And that left him confused. And I said, let's kind of go back to when you see kids out in public. Now, what I try to tell parents, what I call a well-raised kid. By
Mhm.
what I mean by that is back when the kids are around 2 to 3 years old. The parents understand this really important word, no. Okay. The kids where the parents will let their kids do anything they want at any time as they're growing up. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that will generally not take kindly because he wants to deal with male sports in college. And that's very much like the military. When a
Yep.
coach tells you something, they're not asking, they're telling you. And the kids who were raised where their parents said no at 2 and 3, they do that. Okay, they
Right.
understand that. The ones that could do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, they don't listen, and then they're gone. So I said, the same relationship you had with your father, like that, you have to find that adult from that kid you're trying to get and go through them. And what are they looking for?
Right.
Education. They don't want the kid. They don't want the kid going and majoring in rocks or jocks. And then literally, like when I was in college, I went to SUNY Center at Buffalo. A few years before I got there, they had a guy who rewrote every one of their passing records in the football team.
Okay.
The day after he graduated, he went out and got a job. What do you think it was?
Wouldn't even be able to guess.
Bagging groceries
Jeez.
because he didn't get an education. So I was explaining to him what you want to do is find kids whose parents understood the word no, okay, and kind of raised generally the way you were. Find out who has the influence. And if you can't, even if it's the greatest athlete on paper, go to the next one because I can tell you exactly what's going to happen. When I was at Buffalo, our coach for football wasn't doing well. So they got a guy who used to play there, whose previous position was offensive coordinator for Penn State under Lou Fraternal.
Mhm.
Penn State at that time graduated their kids. So he comes to run the football program. We had two school colors that I don't remember. He said, you have to wear those colors. He wore something else. He immediately kicked the kid out, pulled his scholarship. He's gone
Yeah.
because he wore the wrong color once.
Yeah. Yeah. Who was that for you growing up?
Oh,
Who
I
was
would
that?
have to. Uh, the it was a very unusual guy. His name was Mr. Russo.
Okay.
All right. What I found out later, he would come in and he just looked like one of the biggest wood clowns you ever ran into.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly not the case. He went to West Point and then he taught there, and he ended up being the chair of the math department at Siena.
Okay.
Okay. So I was a runt until eighth grade when I literally grew like literally 6 inches in eighth grade.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was picked on, especially being dyslexic, a lot. The thing I didn't find out later about him is in Vietnam, he was in special forces.
Okay.
And this was a guy you just know you just don't want to mess with. So it wasn't so much. So he really made sure that the older kids in the troop, when we went places, kind of stopped all these kids from bullying me a lot. Not really him, but through his elder sons. And let's just say they were very direct about it. And then when it came time, this is probably one of the stupidest decisions of my life. I think you understand what a value of West Point education is.
Sure.
The hardest part of getting that is the congressional nomination.
Okay.
My congressman at the time was Gerald Solomon, and he made it very clear the only people he nominated to military academies were Eagle Scouts. So I got mine. Nobody else wanted it at the time, so it was offered to me. So I went up to West Point with Mr. Russo. Now remember, he not only went there, he taught there.
Okay.
So I'm getting a lot more access than he would generally have. And being the 17-year-old who knew everything about everything, who was right about everything. Yeah, you remember being that age?
Yeah.
I found that West Point was filled with these Mickey Mouse rules. Like you literally couldn't walk on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
That was reserved for like seniors or something. So because of all these Mickey Mouse rules, I declined to attend West Point.
Okay.
Stupid. Now I look back and I understand that West Point is there to produce a product, which is a person who can literally go in and lead a platoon in the field. That's what
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
And that these Mickey Mouse rules are not Mickey Mouse. They're there for a reason that has been developed over, I don't know, 150 years at that point.
Yeah.
So that was one of the stupidest things I ever did for the stupidest of reasons.
Hmm. Wow. So were you in Cub Scouts and Webelos as well?
Yeah,
Or
I did the Cub Scout thing, and then when I hit Boy Scouts, I ran and I pitched through Star as fast as you could go.
okay.
I mean, I was like 12 when I hit that, and then I didn't get my Life Scout until I was 17.
Got it. Got it.
That
So
was I was doing a merit badge a weekend at the end, and then my Eagle project. The person across the street, her husband was on the school board, and then she was on the school board, and she walked me through it. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have made it.
okay. How did the decision get made to move you into Cub Scouts at
Oh,
that?
my father he apologized if he made mistakes, when I was an adult, after 30. And
Uh-huh.
I told him any mistakes he made were so inconsequential. He just knew where I belonged and when I belonged there. And he
Okay.
put me in there. Okay, let me give you an example. He put me in baseball even though I sucked. And I mean, I sucked at baseball. And I was a bench warmer. I played 3 innings every other game
Okay.
through 15. Why was that a smart decision? Because as I was a bench warmer, I got to see, I just watched. I got to see the rules. I got to do all that. And then when I was 16 and got interested in this thing called girls and wanted to spend this thing called money, back then minimum wage was 3.35 an hour. So during the summertime, I worked for the town of East Greenbush as a lifeguard as a swim instructor. And
Okay.
I made 7.50 an hour as a lifeguard and $8 an hour as a swim instructor. So I'm doing already over doubling the minimum wage. But then because I just sat there for years with baseball, I joined the umpires union where I was making 25 to $30 an hour as a union umpire. Now my stuff was $500, my equipment, my shield, the uniform, which I had to
Yeah.
pay my parents back, which I don't care. I'm making that good type of money. And I had to tell them one time I had an assignment at my school called the Averill Park Central School District. And I said, I can't do that. The guy crossed his arm. He said, the schedule's made, it's in stone. You can't bow out for whatever crazy reason. I said, that's my high school. I think they might complain of the bias.
Mm,
And they're like, oh, because the next youngest guy is like 27. So
yeah.
we swapped for that reason. But yeah, I got to learn, and I was just the rule guy. I knew that, and that helped me get elected class president. It helped me. People just saw me as somebody who got stuff done.
Okay.
All right, and it was that was very helpful. I got to learn what was very important was for me to learn is you're a dyslexic. I can't, people that aren't dyslexics, you can go and do just about anything, at least okay. I can't do hardly anything. I got to get things done through other people, which I found later studying business at the MBA level, Master's of Business Administration level, that's essentially what management is. And I
Okay.
had to find out what was important to people, what they would tolerate, what they disliked, what they wouldn't do, and figure out how to get things done through that. And without that, I couldn't do anything close to what I'm doing to today.
Got you. So as you're going through elementary school and you're getting picked on, you're having trouble in your classes and everything, is putting you in these extracurricular activities that perception of your parents to give you something else to look at as to how you can learn life skills?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Got it. Got it. And from that perspective, were you able to navigate through that bullying and your schoolwork once you started picking up on these cues and these other extracurricular activities?
Yeah, but my parents had a very interesting way of dealing with the bullying.
Okay.
What they did is my father would follow the school bus home, wait until the kid got off, and then go up and knock on the door and talk to his parents.
Okay.
All right. And the school did not like that at all, but he said, well, then knock it off. It kept going on until eighth grade when I had that big growth spurt.
Mhm.
And then it pretty much stopped. Um, and then after that, I forced my way out of special ed in eighth grade for history.
Okay.
Got the highest scores the professor ever had, won the history award, and then I went into all college prep out of special ed in ninth grade, and just kept going. It was it was a very it was just I just kept going. I just wouldn't stop.
Yeah. That's amazing that your dad did that for you. I've talked to so many individuals who have had early childhood traumas, and a lot of that was never picked up on by the parents. And the fact that your dad had the love for you to say, "Look, I'm going to figure out where this kid lives, and I'm going to talk to his parents. We're going to get this settled because I don't want this happening to my child."
Oh yeah, and to be honest with you, how do I deal with that now? Because a lot of the kids I work with are bullied.
Yeah.
And I said, we're just done with this nonsense. We're going to use the formal process. There's something called Legal Shield out there, and it's worth getting just for this. You go and you get an attorney involved. And I actually learned I entered law school I had a first grade reading and writing level. And I learned to read and write in law school, auditing classes. And I did extraordinarily well. My second day of contracts, I was called on by the professor. And what they do is they use the Socratic method. If you don't know the answer, what they will do is they will ask you questions you can't answer until to publicly embarrass you until you adapt. I responded as the professor's equal, not as a student. And we argued for 15 minutes
Mm,
until he so I have to move on to the next case. I couldn't be any more correct because of the interest of time. Took me about a month to learn to read and a couple of years to learn to write. So, but with some of my clients, if it was that bad, I would literally go and just using AI, write up the legal briefs that used to take a trained attorney, hours and hours to do. And I would crank it out, and is it as good as what they do? No, doesn't need to be, because what people don't understand about law is the whole point is to try to bury the other side in paper and make them go broke.
yeah.
So then we go to the school and say, here, and then now you got the school's attorney, and now you're not dealing with the principal or the superintendent. You're dealing with the school board
Yeah.
in closed session. And the school board doesn't want to deal with this stuff. They certainly don't want more litigation. And then when they ask, what is it that you want? We want the bullying to stop. And you know exactly what that means.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the attorney is telling the school district, they have a case here. We may win, we may lose, but we're going to drop 6 figures on this, regardless.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it goes to the parents, and now they're threatened with having to get an attorney. And then all of a sudden, the bully's parents, well, let's just say, I don't know how they handle it. I don't care how they handle it. That's their business. It stops.
Yeah.
Or I had one client. This was not some random thing. The kid was jumped on by the bully in the boys' room, and he was beaten. Okay. I mean, beaten. And I said, his parents immediately called me. I canceled my afternoon. And I said, listen, here's what you're going to do. I told the principal, back off. This is not, you're done. I told the dad to call the police immediately. Okay.
Yeah.
Immediately. And I said, immediately get in the car, take your kid with a teacher. So you have an independent third party who's seeing this, immediately to the ER. Okay. And then get a report,
Right.
which they did. And based on that doctor's report, so give you a little hint, cops take pediatricians. This went right up to an attending. This was not a resident
Yeah.
because of what it was. And they wrote out how severe this was, how bad this was, which then was used as a definition. This was a felony assault. And
Mm,
the bully was literally arrested. An arrest warrant was issued by a judge, and they weren't going to let the kid turn himself in. The cops went right to his house, went into his house, and handcuffed him in front of his parents and took him out. And the judge gave the kid a slap on the wrist and said, if you ever come back, you're going immediately to juvie,
yeah.
which happened 3 months later when he beat up another kid even worse.
Jeez.
Yeah, well, guess who's going to be in juvie until their 18th birthday?
That kid.
Yeah, the judge was accepting no deals. Neither was the prosecutor.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, after that, there were other kids that were bullying my client. Here's what happened: they were suspended for 2 weeks, and then they were removed from the school district. They were not going to take any more chances. And then my kid came, my client came home, and he was saying, well, somebody was mean to him. I talked to that kid's parents. I went back to my client and said, the kid really wasn't mean to you. He wasn't being polite, but he was being a little rude. This
Yeah.
was not mean. He was not trying to bully you. I said, there's a difference. You have to know what that difference is. You have to
Yeah.
know where the line is. And how did I know exactly what happened? Because one of the teachers oversaw the entire thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to kind of show them where that line was, but stopping the bullying, that's what I deal with. I deal with the police, I deal with the court system, I deal with the civil system. And you can bring up really good research, and just because I've been to law school, I know I can do an okay job with this. Again, the point is to survive a motion to dismiss, and then the other side's got to get an attorney, and it's going to cost them tens of thousands of dollars. And if all you want is the bullying to stop, again, how that family deals with their kid is their matter,
Yeah,
but it stops.
exactly. Exactly. As you It's interesting that you said you had a growth spurt because I can relate to that. I had a growth spurt as well around that same age. I grew 7 inches one summer. Um,
Yep.
it changed everything in terms of how I was perceived, how I was looked at, and also too because I was going to that private school instead of, having junior varsity level athletics because it was so small, they kind of just had everybody playing on the varsity team. So
Mhm.
that helped the team out because I grew those 7 inches in that summer. That allowed me to play with the 12th graders and the 11th graders. But also too, one of the things that happened because of that is I had developed Osgood-Schlatter's disease, which is an issue with the bones right below the knee caps. And what happens is because you grow so fast that it starts to create this crater, and it has these bone particles that start to extend out on top of that, and it creates very agonizing pain within the knees, especially if you're playing sports. Ended up having to have surgery on my knee because of that. But around that time, going to school and having this learning struggle that you have, what are the things that you're doing at that point in time to navigate having to do your schoolwork and to get it
Oh, there
done?
was people asked me what did I do to. Uh, I just kept pushing forward. I couldn't take any notes in class. I had to remember everything. So, like in eighth grade, the professor asked that my teacher asked me. I kept getting hundreds in all these history tests. He actually required us to think, and I would just think back to his lecture, replay in my head, and that's it.
Okay.
I would just. That's how I got through everything. And then when I went to the New York State Assembly intern program in the late 90s, I wanted to know how laws were made. That's some class I wanted to know. So I went and I showed up with a first grade reading and writing level, and which mean I couldn't do the internship as it was designed. So what happened is the speaker's office got involved, and their response to me being this dyslexic was they didn't care how much it cost. They didn't care what they had to do. They were going to accommodate this. And they had a senior committee together, and they did this rather strange thing. They literally yanked me out of the legislative office building because a big part of the internship was being with your peers. And they
Mhm.
marched me over to the Capitol to Majority Leaders Program and Council's office, which ran the assembly day to day. And they had no clue what to do with an undergrad. So they treated me like a grad student, which was a million times better internship. I was dealing for the assembly with, they had to pass a constitutional amendment twice through several sessions for gambling.
Yeah.
And I was the point person on that while my peers are getting coffee and donuts. So I could see why they did it. There were three administrative assistants that could help with my horrendous writing. And for the academic portion, I gave an hours long Q&A instead of a paper. They wrapped all that up, recommended 15 credits of A minus, and sent it back over to the New York State, I'm sorry, to the SUNY Center at Buffalo's Political Science Department, which looked at all these accommodations, and they didn't like what the assembly itself came up with.
Yeah.
So they said they were going to lower my grade from 15 credits of A minus. What do you think they lowered it to?
An A minus.
No, 15 credits of F.
What?
29 years later, it's still there.
Holy cow.
Well, yes. So then I was one of those people that said, I'm going to solve dyslexia. Well, I actually did. So that led me to go to law school. Remember how I showed you I did 15 minutes arguing with my professor second day of class?
Yeah.
So as I said, I went there, learned, took me an hour, a month to learn to read, a couple of years to learn to write. Then I come back to the New York State Senate and I said, I found a solution for dyslexia. I want you to fund my dyslexia research program, which they don't do. So they said, this sounds intriguing. So they sent me over to the New York State Education Department. Here's the problem. My senator was Senator Joe Bruno, who was the majority leader. So back then in New York State, there was three men in the room that decided everything. It was the governor, the speaker, and the majority leader. And they would make the decisions and then report back to their departments and their organizations, say, okay, this is what we're going to do. So the state education department had to take me very seriously. But they're like, how do we get rid of this kid? They're like, where's this out of? I said, Buffalo. They said, okay, we want a State University of New York distinguished professor in psychology to evaluate this.
Mm.
And if you can't get that or it's not positive, you're done. I said, okay, that can't be that hard. And then they found out that's their highest rank, and there are two in Western New York.
Okay.
One of them happened to be the one that did the evaluation that started this madness with the assembly. And her name was Dr. Irene Herlichka, and she said, of course, I'll do the evaluation. So the state paid her a meager amount for what she did. She called up her own department. She was the chair and then dean of everything at Buffalo State College. And she said, give me your most comprehensive exam. And they sent it over, and she administered it on me for 20 hours over 3 days. The smartest woman I ever met, just assuming everything I was telling her was a pile of manure because she had to make sure that she got it right.
Uh-huh.
And wow, that was merciless. So at the end, she said, as she found out previously, I have a first grade reading and writing ability, but when I turn my system on, my writing is at about the 70th percentile of entering grad students. And it goes back and forth. And here's what happens. It's going from part of the brain that worked to part that didn't work. And here's 5 pages explaining the whole thing. So I take that back to the education department, which is the last thing they were expecting. A severely, severely overwhelming recommendation from their most senior evaluator that this continues. So they're like, okay, you have to connect this to current research. Well, if you look back into that time period in New York State and Western New York, there's only one professor that made any sort of sense. His name was Professor James Collins. He wrote a book called Strategies for Struggling Writers. He had $1.5 million grant from the U.S. Education Department, and he found that there were 3 default strategies of copying, visualization, and narrative. And I had to extend his work from mild dyslexia to severe dyslexia.
Mm.
People told me it was going to take years. Well, there was a university competition, and I had to get my application in 3 weeks. So I didn't have years. I didn't even have weeks. I got his approval in less than 2 weeks.
Nice.
Are you noticing how well I'm doing in grad school? That's because the front part of my brain is 2.5 times overactive, and it's in my specialty because grad school is very specialized.
Yeah.
So then I went and I got $15,000 in the competition. And the first student we tried it on, my reading and writing was for a 6-year-old. She was 8th grade. Her name was Michaela. Her post test was about the 50th percentile. Mine was about the 70th. Didn't transfer over all the way. Remember, Dr. Hulichka is doing all the evaluations. The next student, his name was Adam. Brilliant. I wanted a genius and I got it, but his writing was so bad. Dr. Hulichka wanted him banned from college. She was so upset when she read it. His post test was in the 70th percentile. It transferred over. So then we went and did this in a public school. I got the funding for it, multi-years in a public school. The kids went from the middle school level to the average range of entering grad students. They all went on to college. They all graduated, GPAs at 2.5 to 3.6. We had a 100% success rate. My biggest competition was at the time was Landmark College, by far the best dyslexic college in the country. Again, this is at that time. Things have now changed. In 2013, they had a senior professor take over as president, and now it's a very serious, well-run college. Before that, well, if you had a whole bunch of money and the kid had no business going to college, they would take you anyway, not after 2013. So back
Mm.
then, we were 3x as successful as they were. Our cost to New York State taxpayers was under $900. Their cost was over $100,000. So we were less than 1%. And they took 2 to 3 years. We were one class period for a day for the school year. So we were less than 1/25th of the effort. And when I presented that in New York City, I went in and I thought, I did everything. I'm successful. I'm done. And I was so wrong. What happened is the university's professors came and said, 2 of your kids in this last study jumped up from middle school level to the 70th percentile of the entering graduate students. And I said, yes. They said, we don't care. We want the craft of research. And I was like, the craft of what? It's a book that came out in 1995, since sold over 1 million copies, like we've already discussed, teaching doctoral students to do their PhD work, which is get everybody on the same page as context, which is kind of like what I went through earlier with the new movie review. Come up with a problem
Yeah.
statement that you can
Yeah.
actually do that actually solves the problem, and then coming up with original solution. And they wanted me to teach this to high school dyslexic kids when nobody in the country, no private school dealt with this because it's too evolved. And they wanted everybody literally to have this before they went to college. And I'm not joking. And this is across every professor I ever spoke with once they looked at the book.
Yeah.
And then the teacher said, well, this is amazing. Does this work with all the kids? I said, no, only the super kids, the super smart, super intelligent. They said, come back when it works for everybody. I came back 8 years later, and I've been coming back every year ever since. So,
Nice.
yeah, well, to try to get this to work with everybody, just to give you an example where we are now, the most advanced student we're working with, his name is Grayson. He's not dyslexic in the least. Okay, Grayson is a 99th percentile in math and 99th percentile in science. He wants to get his PhD and work at NASA to terraform Mars. And to do that, we have to get Grayson published in a peer-reviewed journal. So just so everybody knows what that means, it means you write a journal article that is worth disseminating out in the field. The top professors evaluate it to make sure it's worth coming on. Basically, we're talking about adding to human knowledge.
Mhm.
There are 2 ways to get rejected. One is a desk rejection, which means your article that you submitted is not worth sending on to reviewers for a myriad of factors. We got to get past that, and then we have to get to an actual peer reviewer. These are normally senior professors at top universities, and then it will be rejected almost certainly. A comma out of place, it will get rejected. All right, that's where we have to get to Grayson. So we're teaching his dad to teach him how to do a version of that advanced paragraph that we were talking about. All
Mhm.
right. So understanding that, how old do you think Grayson is?
Under 11.
Well, he's 10.
10. Okay. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So I spoke to another podcaster who's on the board of directors of one of the top 10 technical universities in the United States. And once Grayson's ready, probably around 14 or 15, with a draft article that we have submitted, got past peer review, got past desk review, and was rejected by a peer. We'll have a laundry list of things that need to get fixed up. We'll then have him connected to a senior professor where Grayson will go in and say, I want to publish my article. These are the things that need to get fixed. I'd like to work with you on that. And watch the professor's jaw drop because Grayson will be about a decade ahead of where he's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Give
Yeah.
him a really good chance of getting admitted to a top school, and he gets that published, that will give him an excellent chance of getting into NASA.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. One of the things that I'm seeing with your story so far, Russell, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your auditory recall seems to be one of the key factors that has allowed you to continue to move and navigate through school and different fields of things that you've gone through. On top of that, you have this innate ability to be able to what's the word I want to use? Innate ability to delegate, figure out who can do what and how that can benefit you moving forward and traveling the road that you travel. You're picking people that have particular skill sets that you're able to implement to get accomplished what you need to do. Am I kind of on
Oh
the
yeah,
spot?
yeah. Let me give you an example of how I run things. I have two assistants. One has a master's degree in English. One's a doctoral candidate, and I'll be going through, and a lot of the work that I do now, I have AI drafted out. I
Okay.
literally use five. I use ChatGPT 5.5 extended thinking, and I'll have co-work from Claude just do the work. All right, now I have three things running at one time.
Yeah.
Then when I'm done, I'll send to one of my assistants or one of the people that I'm working with that I've met on Podmatch. You would be amazed at the people I'm working with on that. And I'll send things out for them to do. Or if he had an issue with some forms and things, I had to send that out to my basic assistant, my junior assistant, and she was having trouble with it. So she sent it to my senior assistant who was going to fill it out in Canva or whatever it was. And they sent, okay, so I have to know, am I going to have AI do this? Am I going to have my people do this? Or one of my partners do this? And then I bounced it around between them. And it's something I just got very used to know who to assign and what and
Yeah.
make sure which. So the book that I'm doing now is called If You Write, You Can Read, and my co-author is Evelyn Whitebay. She's one of the three people on the Dyslexia Task Force as a teacher.
Okay.
And when you're doing a book, it's really different. So I just decided I went through two ghostwriters and AI before I sent it to Evelyn. But then I decided if I'm bringing on a co-author, Evelyn gets whatever she wants.
Okay.
Okay. This isn't a collaboration where I'm saying, well, maybe I like this, maybe I like this. And no, it's one person's vision and she gets what she wants.
Yeah.
So then we're bringing an editor aboard this one and just making sure everybody's okay with this when we get into conflict points. Oh, yeah. If I wasn't dyslexic, I don't know how I would manage this. I mean, seriously. All right. Everybody's an adult, everybody's a professional. But when you got really passionate things about people who have been not just successful, but amazingly successful in what they do, and they have different viewpoints.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it keeps coming down. Well, what do you want for the book? I said, listen, I had two co-authors. I initially drafted what I wanted with AI, and they ripped it apart and gave me back things. Just so people know, AI is not ready to be able to write a book. I wrote a book with AI. I sent it off to the first ghostwriter, and what came back had nothing in the least associated with what I handed off.
Yeah.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
not, it's there to get you to a good draft, to get the research down, to get the basic structure down, what you want to say.
Yeah.
It's not anywhere near ready to you.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that I've learned. So I said, I don't care whatever Evelyn wants at this point, she gets, because here's the thing, she is so good at what she did. Now, the increase I had is nothing compared to her. She was dealing with a ninth grade student under court appointed fixer. Okay. And in less time, the kid jumped 6.6 grade levels.
Amazing.
So when I look at what Evelyn wants, when I look back a month or two later, and I find out almost at 100% that, and where she were, I think we still disagreed with her under minimum marginal little points. She is right.
Yeah.
So one of the best things I've learned is shut up, let your partner do what they're going to do, and be happy that they're the one doing it.
Yeah.
Because creating a book is such a pain that you can't believe.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I can imagine. Has one of the things that's allowed you to navigate your work and move a little bit more efficiency, has dictation been one of
Oh
those tools?
no, 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 no. Not the way you think.
Okay.
People always come, and I will admit, when I'm using artificial intelligence, I
Mhm.
am constantly dictating to it.
Okay.
I'm going back and forth. I'm getting some ideas out. This is only for the most rough thing. But when I got to think about something, I type it out. And when I really got to think about it, this will really make people scratch their heads. I will grab a pen or a pencil and a legal pad and I will write it out that way.
Okay.
And they said, "Isn't writing atrociously difficult for you?" I said, "More than you can possibly imagine." And I do it because we got to get the ideas out and organized. And there's just something about writing it or typing it that allows you to do it better than dictating.
Yes, yes. This is a very key point because I've mentioned this many times throughout the podcast with other individuals that I've worked with and spoken to about what the brain does for neurological transmission. The act of writing, just taking pen and
Mhm.
a piece of paper and starting to move the hand on that piece of paper. And then also too, it shifts an element of the autonomic nervous system. It slows it down as well, which is
Mhm.
another fascinating component. And so I think that's very key to the fact that you're saying when you really need to focus in on something, you grab a pen and paper and start putting
Yeah.
information down.
Yeah. I mean, literally, I do more creation of knowledge in 1 year than most professionals do in a lifetime.
Mhm.
And it matters because it's moving the field forward. I'm not bragging by any extent until AI. I mean, literally now I do more work in a day now than I used to do an entire year. This is not an exaggeration. Like, let me give you an example. When we're putting up our course on school.com, my collaborator is a woman I met on a podcast. She was extremely skeptical. She was the producer. Her name is Angela. She's a certified elementary school teacher in the state of Texas with a 2 year master's degree and 11 years of experience. When her daughter was born, she quit to become a homeschooling mom. I'm showing her how to take her son, August, who's 9, through this process. And now when we're putting up the curriculum, she will send me what she thinks. I run it through ChatGPT and Opus 4.6, extended thinking. And I go back and forth and she'll send me or she'll come and ask me a question and I'll turn up a 4,000 word report. And everything I send out is edited like you can't believe. I've created in Opus 3 editing modes. One is what I call catastrophic mode. What did you miss that should have been in there? One is max correction, which
Mm,
is what are things we can do to actually correct things that just need to get corrected. And one is a full polish mode, which is really editing. And I run it back and forth. I run back and forth through a lot of the different artificial intelligence until it's as good as it can be. You remember, I'm doing 3 of these at the same time,
yeah.
and then I'm sending it back to her, and then she's making. She said we're down to about 5-10% correction.
Okay.
Okay, and she makes those, and then she's the final arbiter. But she drafts something. I run it through all the science. I run it through all the editing, and then she has something. She's like, "No, I want to rephrase this." It's a few things, and then it's done.
Yeah.
She said this is saving her so much time. And then
Yeah.
everybody I know says, "Well, I can't get AI to produce what you're doing." I said, "Yes, because I produce it in a much more thorough way, and then I edit the living hell out of it." They're like, "Well, that takes forever." I said, "No, if I was a typical master's person with 20 years of experience who's not dyslexic, doing this report would have taken days. I'm getting it done in hours while doing 2 other things."
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. For the work that you've done over the course of the years, how many creatives have you come across who are dyslexic? And have you been able to help them to refocus that skill set of understanding reading and writing to further their creative ventures?
Oh, hundreds. But now that I've done over almost 250 podcasts on Podmatch, I'll tell you one that keeps coming up. I literally go on ones that are creative. And let's say we're dealing with writers, be it script writing, book writing, or whatever. I'll give you an example of the process that I gave you. and how effective this could be. When you're creating a script or a book or what have you, something in that area, coming up with a hero and developing the complexity of that hero, it's generally not that hard. It's just work. What do I mean by work? It might take you 3 weeks, but you know how to do it. It's just work.
Yeah.
But the villain is the conflict. This is where, because if the conflict isn't good, if it's like watching paint dry, nobody's going to watch the movie or read your book or anything. So I said, what you're going to want to do is go through that process. We came up with the universal theme and then use that universal themes as a lens to come up with different concepts to then create your villain or antagonist. And I would say you want to look at maybe 3 of them. It's complicated enough to keep things interesting. I said, if you want to push it, when I actually have taught authors how to do this, I would say, we're going to go back to Harry Potter. And I get like, it's a children's book. I said, yes, but not really. And let's look at Dumbledore and Snape, 2 of clearly the most complicated characters, and how many concepts made that up. And they would go through and analyze, and they're like, wow, they were shocking. And then they're like, okay, let's now look at the concepts there through some of our heroes and see how the interactions create all these subplots that really kept the reader engaged. And I said, this is how you create your primary villain with a certain number of concepts, but then you want to have your minor villains and your minor heroes so that you can have your subplots, but but it comes from these main ones. And they said once they understood that, it caused them to have to work a lot harder, but then their work improved drastically. So
Okay.
yes, that's what happens when you're dealing with all of these, when you're dealing with creatives.
Yeah.
And that's just one example.
And can this be applied to a painter or a musician who is really skilled at either one of their craft, whether it's playing drums, playing guitar, oil painting,
Yes,
watercolor, any of those?
because remember what Dr. Collins' 3 default strategies were: copying, visualization, and narrative. Painting is visualization.
Yeah.
You're just expressing it in a different way.
And the process that you have, how can that amplify that mode of expression?
Let's take a look at, I didn't do painting. I did photography. So
Okay.
just so people know, back in the YOLOs, I did wedding photography, I did sports photography, I did fashion photography.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So I've done all that.
I got to stop you here, Russell, because we've skipped out probably 70% of what would be fascinating for the audience here. If you're doing fashion photography, number one, that's one of my loves. I love fashion. And the fact that you've done fashion photography is fascinating to me. Wedding photography, again, another creative facet of you as the individual that we've completely skipped over.
Yeah, let me give you an example. I went down to Miami and I did swim. It was the biggest swimwear convention around.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm near Albany, New York, which is 150 miles north of New York City. And just my opinion, I think the photographers in New York City are the finest on the planet.
Yes.
They're breathtakingly good.
Yes.
I get down to Miami and everybody's doing this. It's like kissing a fish.
Yeah.
I mean, I swear. Jessica Simpson had a line. She spent, people were telling me it must have cost about 40 grand, 100 grand for that shoot. And the model's doing, let's kiss the fish. I'm like, what the heck? So what I did with the models is I said, number one, we're going to shoot at high noon, which is the worst time in the world to shoot swimwear. You're supposed to do early morning, right sunrise or sunset. That's how it's done. And they're like, what are you doing? I said, trust me. So then I show up and I put them under a palm tree. which confuses them greatly. Then they ask, are you going to put a reflector in our face? And I said, do I look like some poor photography student? They said, well, all photographers down here do that. And I said, that's ridiculous. They're blinding you and getting suboptimum results. So I
Yes.
brought a big studio light with a big battery. My equipment back then was from White Lightning, which is US made.
Okay.
Functional, but not, super fancy. I took off all the modifiers and I brought the light on the models from F11 to F16 at 1/25th of a second. Okay. And that's what the sunlight was.
Yeah.
And I just said, they said, what do you want me to do? I said, well, you know how to model, move around, and I'm going to take a shot like every 1 or 2 seconds,
Yeah.
whatever the refresh rate was. And I said, well, we'll shoot 100 and then we'll go on to the next outfit. And so we're doing that. And then they look at the pictures and they say, this is better than Sports Illustrated. Okay. And I got to the point where I was just shooting JPEGs, which is just, you're losing all the modification stuff just
Yeah.
because, I had so much and they could just use them. And they said, this looks so perfect. Where did you get this? I said, oh, I just came up with it. All right. And so
Yeah.
that level of creativity. So the designers are finding out. Now I'm getting approached by all these designers that want me to work with their models. And I said, sure. But I also said, I need a hair and makeup person that knows the models. Okay.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
need to set up a place where they can change. And I said, without all that, we have none of that.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the things that I did, this was back before all this, before the Me Too movement, is, they would be a changing area set up and they would say, well, are you coming back? The photographers always do. I said, I have no need to be there. That's a bit on the creepy side. I said,
Okay.
the only people that are going to be back there are women.
Yeah.
And what has to happen has to happen. These are, married designers. These are women, people that are your friends that do your hair and makeup. I said, what happens back there? I don't know. I don't want to know. As long as it's kept professional, it's up to you guys.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little hint. Women talk. And because I was actually polite about it and treated them like humans, it made
Yes.
things so much easier.
Yes. Absolutely. I think that's part of the problem in the industry
Hmm.
across the board is the fact that there, number one, there's an air of superiority that is in play just by a particular position that somebody has, and they try to stretch that across to everybody. But when you start working with somebody and you have a little bit of compassion, a little bit of respect of who they are as the individual, that changes the whole dynamic in and of itself. The
Oh, it was so much more than that. I can tell you when I used to photograph for an online trade press. All
Okay.
right. And I got no money. I covered all my expenses, but because people saw my work, I got to do a lot of buyer's catalog, which for me back then, it was a creative outlet that allowed me a couple of times a year to essentially do a paid vacation.
Yeah.
What happened was, so we're down here and you have to understand, this is one of the major fashion shows that goes on every year. And the photographers and the videographers who are it's on the circuit. They're going to Paris, they're going to Milan, they're going to New York, they're going to Miami. They know everybody.
Yeah.
So this is just one of the things I learned about how to deal with people. Everybody in my field were sitting on the floor shooting up at the stage, which is just horrible. So there was a guy. This happened later after what I'm about to tell you. He just hacked one of the videographer's tripods. The
Mhm.
videographer pointed to one of the big gorillas who was security, pointed at the photographer and said, "Thumbed out." And the
Yeah.
guy was literally picked up and literally brought out physically. You
Yeah.
don't do that. One little glitch, and their whole thing is worthless.
Yeah.
So the photographer around me, he didn't have his program, so here's mine. And then he said, I can't find my bottle of water. I went and got him. He literally got up, got into a worse spot coming back, and said, here's a bottle of water. Actually, here's two for the people around you. And he then said, would you want to sit on my case? And I said, sure. His photography case that, goes through all the customs. And
Yeah.
people said when he left, you can't sit on that. He'll explode. He said, I got permission. Well, it just so happened that at one of the major events, guess who was the show photographer?
This guy.
Yeah. So what happened is I got to, again, being dyslexic, I got to know people. So what happened is they had to clear everybody out. I went and I got a drink, and the drink was $3. And then I left it. I gave the guy a 20, and I said, I'd keep it. I just gave the guy like 700% tip. And he's just looking at me and he's, "Oh, just keep it." And then I gave him another 10. Now he's
Yeah,
really suspicious. Then I go over and I sit down and I'm slowly drinking my Coke.
yeah,
And then they're clearing everybody out. And he looks over at me when security's coming. I look over at him and he says to security, he's fine. He's one of the photographers. So the security guy's like, okay, they chase everybody out. This is how that. This is when I go and find out the guy I helped was a show photographer. I go and I'm kind of just walking around trying to get a decent spot back in Outer Mongolia for the fashion show. That guy spots me. He said, "Yeah, I'm the show photographer." So now he gets these director's chairs. Now we
uh-huh,
all have monopods to put our cameras on. So I'm sitting right next to him, and all of these people are coming in who are on the circuit, and they're trying to kick me out. And he said, "No, that's him. He's staying. I'm the show photographer, which don't mess with me." So I
yeah,
got to sit right next to him. I got these wonderful shots. And then they got all these designers who came up and they wanted to buy my pictures.
yeah.
I apparently was selling them for about 10 cents on the dollar. To me, it was so much money it paid for my travel for the next 2 years.
Oh,
And everybody
wow.
thought I was because I signed away my rights. They could use those pictures anywhere.
Yes.
And I didn't care. It was a lot of money
Yeah.
because I gave the guy some water and gave him my program.
But what's fascinating for me in this conversation is I see those characteristics going all the way back to your dad and the
Well,
way
yeah,
that he raised you.
that is exactly. And one other one I just find, if you like that one, you'd find this interesting. I was up in Toronto and we were having a fashion show at some nightclub. And I got there way early, like 6 hours early, which is just obscene. The
Yeah.
show photographer didn't show up until 4 hours earlier. And we
Yeah.
got talking. And so I got like one of the premier spots. I pointed him and said, "Where do you want it? How can I get out of your way?"
Hmm.
Which is, he was happy about that. But then we find out that we were at the point where the models were going to come out and we had to get on the other side. So I immediately got up on the stage, ran across, and got the best spot. And then the show photographers out in Outer Mongolia. So I said, "You come down, I will go up to Outer Mongolia," which means I went from having very excellent shots for my publication to things that are going to be next to useless. Well, other people then invited me down, and I got like one of the better spots. Okay.
Oh,
But I can tell you, after that, I ran into some problems in Toronto. And he said, "If you ever have any problems in this town, call me." So I did. 10 minutes later, every time, it's solved.
yeah.
And the people came back and they didn't like that. They're like, "What did you do?" He's one of the top 5 photographers in this city. And he
Yeah.
essentially said, "If we don't want to become enemies, I'm going to," because I wasn't asking for much. I was just asking for, I always
Sure.
made sure I asked for something kind of small. I never tried to throw it around. And they
Yeah.
said, "What did you do?" And I explained what I did. And they said, "Oh, that explains it." Because that job was a very big deal for him. And if I didn't give him that spot, I mean, it could have cost him his reputation.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
Okay.
Again, I'm going to another person who was very impactful in your life early on, and that was Mr. Russo's sons, who
Oh, yeah.
stopped some of the bullying that was taking place because they stepped in and they recognized, hey, we're not treating this kid like this. You're going to respect him and you're not going to be picking on him.
Well,
And
you have to understand when we were doing this, this was the 80s. And as I said, their father was a Vietnam vet who was in special forces. So their idea of telling the kids to stop if they wouldn't, they tended to get into a fist fight, and it didn't end up with black eyes. They would end up breaking ribs.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All
Exactly.
right. So yeah. So that's how they stop things. People either listened or
There was
bones
consequences.
got broken, and then it stopped that way.
Yeah, consequences. But where I was going with that is the fact that it, you're constantly in these places of being looked after by potential higher ups because of the kindness that you had and the respect for others that you had instilled in you early on in your life. And that for me is a beautiful thing because I think if that message can get out to the world that, hey, things can be a lot smoother if you just change the way you're approaching people, approaching situations, approaching people who may not be on the same level as you, but are still valuable in and of themselves. And even those who have a learning disability or neurodivergence or any of those things that might seem quirky to normal people that are out in the world or quote unquote normal people, if we're able to look at it from the perspective of they have just as much value, they just view and see things differently than what everybody else is. If we have that understanding, and we can navigate this world a little bit better, a little bit smoother, I think.
Well, yeah. And again, when you're dealing with a business, you have to understand. Like, let me give you an example. When we're dealing with customers, uh, not everybody's going to be happy all the time.
Right.
Okay. And the stupidest things nowadays that I see people doing, and when I mean stupid, I'm calling this stupid.
Yeah.
They try to fight the customer, and then they don't realize this isn't 1952. We have this little thing called social media. All
Yes.
right. So when I was going through business school, there was a guy who was a dyslexic that started this little company called Kinko's, and he's severely dyslexic. He said he can't operate any of the machines. He just goes around to different stores and bugs people, find out what works in one and spreads it across the organization. So what he said got me. He said, to give you an example, when a customer comes in because they made a mistake, they screwed up, and it's not the person, this person that just this kid, this 18-year-old kid. I'm 52, so I'm calling an 18-year-old a kid.
Okay.
Is just the lowest ranked person there, and somebody comes in and let's say they screw up a $2,000 print job. Now remember, we're going back into the '90s for this, so that meant a lot more money than
Yeah.
today. The kid wouldn't then go to the manager to try to figure this out because going to the manager is just going to make the person angry. So what they were trained to do was to ask, "We apologize. What can we do to make this right?" And then get this, the customer will tell you what they want to resolve it.
Right.
And most of the time, it's less than what you would have done. So then what happened is the kid will then go, okay, we will get that done immediately. How can we contact you? Do you want to wait until we get this done? Or would you like us to call you? I will personally do this right now. And
Yes.
then the customer's kind of like expecting World War III battle here, and then they're getting exactly what they want from a polite kid.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what happens is I remembered that. So when we didn't do, something happened where it didn't happen the best what people were expecting. I said, okay, how do you want to resolve this? What can we do? And then whatever that was, as long as it was in the realm of anything reasonable,
Yep.
including just a full refund, even though it's against our general policy, you just do it
Right.
that way.
Yeah.
Now, what happens? Typically, the person's left in shock, and then they come back and they say, okay, they're now actually happier than if we performed flawlessly. But at the worst case, I can tell you what I avoided. people running and spreading things off social media.
Yes.
Okay. I ran across one family because, again, we train parents to teach their kids. And this parent was an executive, and they literally had no time to do what we need to do. So she said, well, we just want a refund. And I usually require parents to actually go and do the work before I institute a refund. But I was like, okay, this is nobody's fault. This is just a mismatch. So I
Yeah.
said, okay, I will. I went and I pulled my assistant off whatever she was doing. And I said, I don't care. Get this thing refunded like now.
Yeah.
Oh, she said, well, can't I wait an hour? And I said, no, get it done now. And then the customer literally contacted their bank, and the bank said, yeah, the other party refunded the things, but you won't show it up on your statement for 2 weeks or whatever it was. And then the client yelled at the credit card company, but our side was done.
Yes.
Okay. And what that did is she said, you know what I was about to do? I said, yeah, you were about to go and destroy us on social media. And I said, if you check on social media, you won't find it because I don't pull that nonsense. When there was a complaint, I tell my employees and my partners, it comes right to me. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you wake me up. Okay.
Yeah.
We deal with this now because that's what I learned from the dyslexic who ran Kinko's.
See, that's amazing. I think so many people can learn just from that bit of information right there.
Yeah, because let me just tell you, like one time, again, we ran into a thing where it was a dad, and dad was an executive doing 75 hours a week. He was not somebody that could teach. He was somebody who wanted just to hire a tutor. Okay. And so he calls me up and he bought one of our more expensive packages. And I said, I will get my assistants online and I will have this back to you. Like literally, I contact my assistants and they just literally within 10 minutes, I said, you can contact your bank. Our side is done. And I said, where you want to go is I pointed him to the Gowl School, GOW.org. I said, just so everybody knows now in 2026, this is their 100th anniversary.
Okay.
I said, contact them. If you send your kid there, they will be as educated as the best private schools on the planet.
Mm,
Or what you want to do is hire a certified Orton tutor, which
okay.
is 2 years past a bachelor's degree, $11,000. And he said he went with a tutoring route. And I said, where to find one? And he said, I told him it's insanely expensive and they're going to be with your kid through what grad school if you send them to grad school. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened. But it was what he said, you spent 2 hours with me at 3 o'clock in the morning because I was being so angry. I said, yes, that's something called customer service. And
Yes.
at the time, that's what you needed. He
Yep.
said he looked at Gowl. He could afford it, but he didn't want to send his kid to boarding school. But he's like, yeah, I found a certified person. It was more expensive than what you said because they had more experience than I thought they would have. And literally, the person worked with that kid through grad school.
Yeah.
Not because they're trying to reach onto a family. It's just hasn't changed a lot since the 1950s, and just takes that long to keep up. And he was happy with that. But these are the things that you have to do if you're going to run a business.
Yeah. Absolutely. And also, too, I think for those out there that are creative that may have dyslexia, that are struggling, being able to think differently and in a different format, so to speak, I think is the superpower that they have to be able to succeed. They just need to learn how to be able to turn that to a different angle so it becomes a lot more clearer for them. And I
Well,
think
if you
that's
want to
probably
look, if you want to look at that, the one I would like to point you to is this: Walt Disney, The
uh,
Triumph of the American Imagination.
yes,
This was the most creative entertainer in the United States history, as far as I'm concerned.
yes,
Okay. People think Disney was dyslexic. The International Dyslexia Association would say it, but a lot of people think it. Okay. If you look, have you ever been to Disneyland or Disney World?
once, yes, in Florida.
How old were you?
16.
Did you feel the Disney magic?
No.
Okay. But you see how a lot of people do.
Yes, absolutely.
The Disney magic is based on two universal themes. One is escape.
And see,
Okay.
to, just to give you some clarity on my perspective, I recognized that as a kid watching the Disney movies every
Okay.
week. I think it came on Sunday night or Saturday night, one of the two. But that's where I experienced. I didn't experience it in the full blown amusement park scenario. I experienced it just from those movies.
Okay. The thing is, okay, what you're looking at here is the first universal theme is escape. Anybody
Yeah,
can find that in 5 minutes going through his biography.
for
But I've
sure.
never had parents figure out what the second one is until I told them, which is control.
Mm,
Not your control, how Walt wants you to perceive it.
yeah,
Okay. So when you go to, like, you go and you look at Cinderella's castle, all right, it's not as high up as you think is. The perception is that when you go around all the worlds in the Magic Kingdom, it's he's holding your control and giving you the sense of escape, but how he wants this to be done. Okay. Now, if you compare that to another dyslexic, when you look at Steven Spielberg, did you ever see Saving Private Ryan?
yes,
Do you remember that 20 so minute or so opening, how he just dragged you into that inferno?
yeah,
Steven Spielberg does not let you to decide what you're going to feel in a movie. He grabs you and
right.
forces you to view his world through what he sees.
Yeah,
Okay? The same thing that Disney is doing with those. That's what essentially makes the Disney magic. It's a sense of escape through his control.
hmm,
Once you understand that when you're dealing with the neurodiverse and they understand it, how can we compel our audience to see the world the way we're looking for? What I'm finding is a lot of them things become a much clearer and they're able to execute their art the way that they and the world perceives it in a much closer to what they've been looking for the
yeah,
first time ever.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I definitely believe that to be true.
Yeah.
Very much so. I think that's a fantastic place for us to be able to close out today, Russell, is
Mhm.
around that magic. And one of the things that I always want to remind the audience at the end of each one of these conversations is to always listen to your heart, but in the same breath, be kind to your mind.